When we think of Britain in the 1970s, the first image that comes to mind is usually one of gray skies, constant rain, and people always carrying an umbrella. But there was a period that completely defied this idea. The heat arrived with such intensity that millions of Britons simply didn't know how to react. For a country accustomed to mild temperatures, those days seemed to belong to another continent. And the most curious thing is that nobody imagined that this would only be the beginning of one of the most remarkable periods in British climate history. Families had to learn, almost overnight, to live in conditions for which their homes, customs, and even their routines had never been prepared. What seemed like just a different summer ended up transforming daily habits, bringing neighbors closer together, and creating memories that would remain vivid for decades. And you'll discover that some of the solutions found were as simple as they were surprising. Many British houses had been designed to conserve heat during the harsh winter. Thick walls, smaller windows, and efficient insulation were advantages for much of the year, but became a real problem when the extreme heat arrived. During the day, these buildings absorbed the high temperatures and, at nightfall, remained hot, making it difficult even to sleep. That's when many families resorted to creativity. Curtains remained closed during the hottest hours, interior doors were left open to promote air circulation, and any small breeze was used to the fullest. Although these seem like common practices today, back then these strategies were discovered through experience, shared among neighbors, and passed from one house to another like true survival secrets. Without air conditioning units scattered throughout homes, coping with the heat depended much more on creativity than technology. Some families placed damp sheets on windows to slightly cool the incoming air, while others used basins of cold water to cool their feet during rest periods. These were modest solutions, but they provided important relief on the sweltering days. Another very common habit was to completely reorganize the household routine. The heaviest tasks were carried out in the early morning hours, when the temperature was still pleasant, while the rest of the day was dedicated to more relaxing activities. It was a natural adaptation that allowed for saving energy and avoiding the strain caused by the intense heat, showing that often the best solution lay in changing one's own habits. Today, you can simply walk into a store or buy something online to get a fan in a few hours. In the 70s, however, the reality was completely different. A series of hot days was enough for stocks to disappear quickly, leaving thousands of families without any mechanical alternative to cool their homes. Those who managed to find a fan treated it almost like a precious possession, placing it in the busiest rooms or rotating its use among family members. Meanwhile, those who weren't so lucky resorted to traditional fans, folded newspapers, or simply sought any available shade in the garden or nearby parks. These scenes became a striking portrait of that unforgettable summer. While the heat was a source of worry for adults, for many children it meant freedom. As soon as the sun appeared, the neighborhood streets filled with bicycles, games, and laughter. Hoses running in gardens became makeshift water parks, while buckets of water provided hours of fun for siblings and friends. The parks also experienced an unusual surge in activity. Entire families spent much of the day outdoors, bringing sandwiches, drinks, and blankets to enjoy every available moment of shade. Interestingly, it was these simple memories that ended up becoming some of the most cherished recollections of those who lived through that period, showing that even an extreme summer could create unforgettable stories. The intense heat not only transformed routines outside the home, but also what reached the table. Preparing time-consuming meals in front of a hot stove made cooking practically unbearable, leading many families to opt for lighter and quicker dishes. Salads, sandwiches, seasonal fruits, and frozen desserts began to appear much more frequently, while drinks like lemonade, iced tea, and water remained readily available to alleviate the feeling of heat. Another curious detail was the race to keep food fresh. Not all homes had large refrigerators or efficient freezers, forcing many people to shop more frequently and in smaller quantities. Butchers, bakeries, and neighborhood markets received customers practically every day, reinforcing a custom that brought communities even closer together and strengthened local commerce during that unusual summer. While children enjoyed the sunny days, thousands of workers faced a very different reality. Offices, factories, and shops almost never had air conditioning systems, and the accumulated heat inside the buildings made the workdays much more tiring. As soon as the clock struck the beginning of the afternoon, concentration decreased and any task required much more effort than usual. On public transport, the situation could be even more uncomfortable. Trains and buses were often overcrowded, with windows open in an attempt to create some air circulation. Even so, the environment remained stuffy for long periods. It was during these weeks that many companies began to realize the importance of adapting schedules, making some activities more flexible, and offering better conditions to employees when extreme temperatures returned. If there is one summer that remains etched in the memory of the British, it is that of 1976. For weeks, the rain practically disappeared, and several regions recorded temperatures well above average for a country accustomed to a mild climate. Lawns turned yellow, rivers receded, and the ground began to show visible cracks, something that seemed unthinkable to a large part of the population. The situation became so serious that public campaigns began to encourage the conscious use of water. Gardens stopped being watered. Washing cars became a luxury for the few, and every drop became precious. Even in the face of these difficulties, many families found ways to maintain a positive attitude, transforming that period into an experience that mixed concern, solidarity, and a surprising capacity for adaptation. It was precisely during those warm days that many customs gained strength. In the late afternoon, it was common to see neighbors chatting in front of their houses to enjoy the cooler breeze, while children continued playing until sunset. Parks became meeting points, and a simple picnic could bring together several generations of the same family in one place. These moments created memories that transcended the summer itself. Decades later, many people still recall the taste of ice cream sold on the streets, the sound of hoses spraying water through gardens, and long conversations outdoors. The extreme heat brought difficulties, but it also brought communities closer together in a way that would hardly have happened under normal circumstances. Today, as heat waves become increasingly frequent in different parts of the planet, looking to the past reveals valuable lessons. Without relying on advanced technologies, those families learn to adapt schedules, change habits, conserve resources, and work together to face extremely difficult days. Many of the attitudes that arose out of necessity continue to be recommended to this day. Perhaps the greatest lesson left by that generation was not just how to endure the heat, but how to face unexpected challenges with creativity and a spirit of community. In a time when almost everything depended on cooperation between neighbors and family, they showed that small actions can make a huge difference. And, interestingly, some of the simplest solutions of the past may be exactly those that the modern world most needs to remember. While the interiors of houses remained warm even after sunset, gardens took on a completely new importance. Many families began bringing chairs, folding tables, and even mattresses to the backyard, taking advantage of any draft that made the environment more pleasant. The simple habit of having a cup of tea outside, so common at other times of the year, transformed into a way to escape the heat accumulated between the brick walls. As night fell, the neighborhoods took on a different atmosphere. Neighbors chatted for hours on the sidewalks, children still played late into the night, and it was common to hear laughter coming from the gardens. Instead of remaining isolated indoors, many families rediscovered the pleasure of outdoor gatherings, creating a sense of community that became one of the most memorable aspects of that summer. The high temperatures also completely changed the routine of shopkeepers. Bakeries started preparing more cold drinks, grocery stores increased orders for ice cream and soft drinks, while small markets saw products like ice disappear from the shelves in the early hours of the day. Many shopkeepers had never witnessed such intense demand for items related to the heat. At the same time, street vendors seized the opportunity to offer popsicles, drinks, and fresh fruit in parks and busy streets. For many of them, that summer represented an unexpected increase in sales. The heat, which for some meant discomfort, ended up creating new opportunities for those who were able to quickly perceive the change in the population's behavior. The effects of the heat wave were not limited to cities. In several rural regions, farmers observed crops suffering from lack of rain, while pastures that were once green began to take on a yellowish hue. Small streams decreased in volume, and some lakes showed water levels well below normal, raising concerns among experts and residents. Even those who lived far from the countryside noticed these changes during weekend outings. Dry lawns, trees showing signs of stress, and gardens requiring constant care became part of the British landscape. For a population accustomed to a humid climate, those scenes seemed almost unreal, reinforcing the feeling that they were living through a historic moment. Decades later, many people still describe that summer with a mixture of surprise and nostalgia. Some remember the long lines to buy ice cream, others recall the smell of dry grass in the parks, or the nights when the whole family stayed together in the garden waiting for the temperature to finally drop. Small details of everyday life ended up becoming unforgettable memories. Perhaps that's precisely why the heat waves of the 1970s continue to generate so much interest even today. They not only marked meteorological records, but also the lives of millions of ordinary people who learned to face an unexpected challenge with creativity, solidarity, and a great capacity for adaptation. It is stories like these that show that, often, the simplest everyday events end up becoming the most memorable chapters of history.